Fala, pessoal. Esse episódio, mais do que especial, começou quando eu ouvi o podcast Beauty Champions, do Greg Bennett, que é o The Greg Bennett Show. Eu fiz um comentário nas redes sociais e fiquei surpreso ao receber um vídeo do próprio Greg Bennett agradecendo o comentário. E a partir daí, a gente começou a trocar mensagens sobre podcast, sobre o triatlon, e eu acabei convidando ele para participar do Café com Tri. E, de novo, para minha surpresa, ele aceitou. Então, a gente vai falar um pouquinho sobre o Greg, sobre treinos, sobre desenvolver forças e fraquezas, que é um dos artigos que ele escreveu no blog dele, e sobre qualquer outro tópico que for surgindo durante a conversa. A gente vai fazer a gravação em inglês, porque obviamente ele não fala português, e espero que todo mundo curta. Então, bom episódio para todos.
Café com Tri, a sua dose de triatlon.
Pega o seu café e vem com a gente.
Hi everyone, I'm Bethany Trini and welcome to a very special episode of Café com Tri or Coffee with Triathlon, whichever you prefer. I'm here with Erika Malgrisi, Wagner Spadotto and Sergio Magalhães. How are you guys?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm excited.
And today we have a very special guest, and I like to start by listing some of his career highlights. And I said some because if we try to list all of his titles, and we wouldn't have time to check. So our guest was born in Australia in January 2nd, 1972, and started competing in triathlons in 1987 with 15 years of age. He won 2 times the ITU World Series. He was the ITU World Championship. He has 6 World Cup titles and was ranked the number 1 athlete in 2002 and 2003. Took part in 2 Olympic Games, Athens 2004 with a 4th place and Beijing 2008. He won the biggest prize purse of triathlon history by winning all the 5 races of Lifetime Fitness Triathlons in 2007. And he was also voted the Triathlete of the Year in 2007 by the Triathlete magazine. In his 28 years of racing as a pro, he competed in more than 500 races and with more than 100 wins. He retired as a pro in 2014 and now owns the Bennett Endurance and also the Greg Bennett Show, the podcast, and the Bennett Endurance with his coaching business, and lives in Florida with his wife, Laura, also a great triathlete, and kids. So I'd like to welcome to our show, Mr. Greg Bennett.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It's very, very flattering, and I'm very honored to be on your show. So thank you for reaching out and inviting me on, because it's a real thrill to do these conversations. I wish I could speak Portuguese for you guys and for your listeners. And I'll try and speak a little slower because I know my Australian, I can go a little quickly, but I'll be very conscious of that during this whole conversation. But lovely to meet you all.
Hi, Greg. Nice to have you in the show. I was telling Beto this week that I had to listen to like 5 of your podcasts to get used to your Aussie accent.
That's great. I hope I didn't bore you with my show. I hope it was at least interesting for you.
No, not at all. I love your show, actually.
Oh, thank
Greg,
you. That's very kind.
Be welcome. You have a great fans here in Brazil, not of us, much than you can imagine.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It's one of my big regrets in my career is that I actually never made it to Brazil to race. My good friend Timothy O'Donnell, who you guys probably know, has been down many times. Tim Don, he went down many times, and they've both raved about racing down there, both the 70.3s and of course the Brazil Ironmans that you have. And it is one of those things that I never quite made it down there, but just heard so many wonderful stories of that part of the world and the passion for triathlon down there and the love that you guys have for the sport. I did race many great Brazilians when in the 90s, Macedo and Manzan, 2 just unbelievable rocket ships on the run. Was it Macedo that out-sprinted me in the 96 World Championships for the bronze medal in Cleveland? Or was it Manzan? I'm going to get the 2 names confused, but one of them came round with me about...
Yeah. Manzan.
Manzan. He came around with 100 meters to go and took the bronze medal. But yeah, great part of the world, guys.
So tell me something. I'm curious. How did you start doing triathlons? Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about that.
It was, I think it was 14, 1986. And I had a couple of good mates of mine that said, do you want to come and do the run leg for this thing called a triathlon out at Nepean, west of Sydney. And it was, I said, I could run. So I was like, sure, I'll give it a go. How far is it? And they said, it's 14 kilometers.
What? What triathlon was that?
Well, this is back in the day. It was like we didn't have the standard Olympic distance. It was, if you had a surf club, a swim club, they would put on a triathlon, and the swim would be, 2 kilometers or 2 miles long. The bike would be about 10 kilometers, and the run would be 1 mile. It was like, but if you had a run club put it on, like this one out in Nepean, west of Sydney, I think the swim was 800 meters, the bike was 30 kilometers, and the run was 14 kilometers. And it was Nepean is one of the oldest triathlons in the world. It still goes on today. And so I went out, and when we got there, the guy that was meant to do the swim portion had a bit of an asthma issue that morning, and he couldn't do the swim. So I said, Greg, you surf a little bit. How about you do the swim? I'd never done any sort of swim training in my life. So here I am. I jumped in the water and swam the 800 meters, which just still to this day, I have flashbacks of just how far and how painful that was. With no training, 800 meters is a long way. And
you knew how to swim.
I knew how to swim, but I wasn't a swimmer. I mean, I could survive in the water, but
like me.
like Wagner,
like many triathletes out there. The swim was not my background, and I remember coming out of the water second last in the team competition, and I beat one elderly woman. And so I wasn't last. I remember that. I tagged my mate who went and did the bike ride, and then he came back. He might have even overtaken a couple, but we were definitely the back end of the race, and I took off on that run like it was an 800-meter race, on the track, and then quickly realized about a kilometer in that, hang on, 14 kilometers is a long way. Got through it and immediately crossed the line with my friends, with the energy, the people, the camaraderie. It was like everybody had gone to hell and back. We'd all survived a massive challenge, and I was honestly addicted to the sport from that moment. And I went and got a road bike for Christmas that year, because I think the Nepean race was in October. So I think Mum and Dad spoilt me with a road bike, and I think I entered my first race, like you guys just said. I think it was either early 87 or 86. My memory isn't quite clear these days. It's a long time ago, and I've got 2 little kids, so I think my memory is just completely gone. But it was a really quick dive into the sport. Did my first sort of race in Wollongong, and I remember that was just brutal. I did break 3 hours. It was an Olympic distance race, that one. That one was 1500, 40 and 10, and I think I was 2 hours 48 or something. Nothing impressive, but again, just loved. I think for me, it was the energy and the people, and a sense of, and I've said it on my show a little bit, when you're 14, 15, we're all going through high school, we're all dealing with insecurities, we're all trying to find ourselves a little bit. And what I got from triathlon was that sense of belonging to something bigger than myself, surrounding myself with people that were all just trying to get more out of life, that kind of an energy. And it was just from that moment, I was a triathlete. I knew I always would be. It was like, that was my community, and I was so fortunate to just have a couple of mates that introduced me to it.
And you start listening to the stories about people telling you about races they did, and then you start creating like this community. And that's what I really love about the sport as well. Yeah,
and you all travel, suddenly you use the sport to travel and see parts of your country that you'd never go to, and then maybe it even gets a bit further. We used to drive up the coast of New South Wales, which is one of the states in Australia there, and and every little town had a triathlon during the summer. And, you'd go spend a weekend in Taree or Kempsey or Crescent Head, and you just keep going up and you go with your mates. And I had no money. I was, we'd sleep in the back of the car, and we'd stay to the end of the prize giving, because that's when, all the fruit would be left over from the race. We'd go home with a box of bananas.
Adventure.
Yeah, it was always an adventure. You're right. That's exactly right. And then on top of that, obviously you enjoyed the testing yourself. It's like true growth really comes from that challenge. And when you overcome the challenge, you grow a little bit more. And I think that's the addictive part. It's the challenging, meeting that challenge and trying again. And then obviously in my late teens, I started getting a few pats on the back. What I mean by that, a little bit of success and people saying, hey, you're pretty good, and you enjoy that kind of a feedback. And so that's, I started getting a little bit more into it after that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. And triathlon is huge in Australia. You got a lot of great triathletes coming from them, like yourself and Greg Welch, Michael Jones, Tian Welch, Craig Alexander, Chris McCormack, Amos Nosso. So why is that?
Just to list some.
Yeah, just to list some. I know. It's an incredible group. Peter Robinson, Miles Stewart added to that list. Even before that group, Tim Bentley, Greg Stewart, just so many phenomenal. Stephen Foster led the way. Brad Bevan, one of the all-time greats. I think a lot of it was, firstly, we had access to racing. There was a lot of races. Like I said, all the surf clubs put on races, all the local towns put on races. There was plenty of racing for us to do. And obviously, a bit like Brazil, we're very much an outside community. So it was, we're out and about. I think adding on the professional side of things, it was very acceptable to be a professional athlete even when you were 16, 17, 18. And that was what you wanted to go do. It wasn't, you're going to do what, which I've found in the US. A lot of people say, you can be a professional triathlete and make money or whatever. In Australia, people didn't ask that question. It was like, oh, you're doing triathlon professional. Oh, good on you. That's great. And then I think we had a culture of there was a lot of grit in that 80s and 90s group that came out. And what I mean by that, there was a real sheer determination to try and do something great. And maybe it's an island fever type thing. You want to get off the island and prove yourself to the rest of the world or whatever it was. But, I think adding that to the fact that we got to race each other every weekend, and that kept lifting the bar. Every time I raced as a 20-year-old, 21, 22, I was racing a world champion every time I raced. Whether that be Greg Welch or Miles Stewart or Brad Bevan, who'd won the World Series so many times. Every single time I raced, I got to race the best in the world. And so I was never... I always knew the place. I didn't win anything. I never beat them, but I knew the level. I knew the standard. And I think that helped myself, Chris McCormack, Craig Alexander, Craig Walton, a whole heap of us. We really improved because of that generation. But I think the fact that we had access to a lot of racing was key.
Is there any type of public investment in triathlon, or is it just the clubs like you're saying?
Oh, no, now there's, a lot of that changed once triathlon got into the Olympics. The federations started getting more backing from, the national sporting bodies. And that's not always a good thing. I think it's, I think we often see the best perform when their back is against the wall. If you have to pay the rent or you have to find some money to be able to pay the bills, it's that desperation that can often get the very, very best out of ourselves. And I think sometimes the federations can be very helpful, but they can also be hurtful if you make it too comfortable. This sport is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be tough. It is meant to be challenging. It's a brutally punishing sport, but that's what we want it to be, because it's overcoming that brutality that life really begins. I really feel like comfort is a disease. It's a bad drug. We don't want to get too comfortable. And so I think that was always what we had coming out of the 90s. I think in the noughties, the federations did get a little bit more involved. Yes, there was a little bit more funding for the athletes. But like I said, I don't know if that's fantastic or not. It's still, there's good to come out of it. I shouldn't just put the federations down, because there is a lot of good that comes out of it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit old school in the way I think.
Okay.
No, I like the way you think.
Yeah. Greg, we mentioned that you win at the Lifetime Fitness Series, winning all 5 races in Minneapolis, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas. And on this series, the woman had an early start, and it was the winner takes it all race. Tell us about the series, and what did you think of this format, and why haven't we see this anymore?
Yeah, so the Lifetime Fitness Series, so people that don't know, Lifetime Fitness is a chain of gyms, a big fitness chain in the US here. The CEO and founder by the name of Brahm Akrati. And Brahm loved the sport of triathlon. He's a mad cyclist. He was surprised at how little the professional triathletes were making in terms of prize money, and he wanted to do something about it. And so personally, he did. He decided, firstly, he put on a big race in Minneapolis, which is where the Lifetime Fitness gym chain is headquartered, in Minneapolis. So he put on a big race there, and I think it started in 2001. That race started, at first it was I can't remember the prize money, but if I said it was 50,000 for the win, and then it sort of dropped off, and that was the women would get a certain start over a men, and whoever was first across the line would get the 50,000. That money increased to the point, I think it got to 250,000 for whoever was first across the line. Had people like Barb Lindquist win it, Loretta Harrop. I think Craig Alexander won it one year. That was one of his really big short course wins. And so that was kind of the men versus the women type math. I never loved that because I always felt like the mathematician was getting in the way of just letting us race. But I get the idea behind promoting the sport, and there's a bit of money out there, and so it's all good. But in 2006, Brian McCarty said, look, I'm going to put on a series of races. And so in 2006, we started, what did we do there? That was a 4-race series. And so I won that one, but I didn't win every race. I think Craig Alexander got me in Chicago, but otherwise I kind of won New York, Chicago, and whatever else. No, not Chicago, Los Angeles. But then the 2006 series finished with the Minneapolis in 2007. But the Minneapolis in 2007 was also the first race of the 2007 series. Okay. So my mindset, because it was between Craig and I to win the 2006 series, I was really focused on winning Minneapolis, which I hadn't done. And Minneapolis had pretty decent prize money for the day, but it also, for me, was doubled up by the fact if I could win there, I would also win the 06 series. And so that's what happened. I ended up winning that race, winning the 06 series. But they had announced during the few months before the 07 series that, look, if somebody can win all 5 races in 07, we'll throw in, a big bonus for anybody who could do that. Not for a moment did I think I could ever do that. I hadn't won Minneapolis ever before. I hadn't won Chicago before. I'd won sort of New York and Los Angeles, but I just wasn't confident. And no guy at that time was dominant. Like these last 10 years, we've seen some real dominating performances by Alistair Brownlee and Javier Gomez. You know when they're on the start line, they're likely to win or be on the podium. But in that sort of era of 2004 to 2009, before Javier Gomez came along and really just destroyed us, we had myself and Hamish Carter and Simon Whitfield and Bevan Doherty and Hunter Kemper, and there was just so many guys that were winning on any given day that I don't think any of us really thought much about the winning 5 races in one year. But we thought potentially Emma Snowsill could. She'd been winning everything and was just absolutely on fire. But she got beaten in Minneapolis on race 1 by Vanessa Fernandez. And so Vanessa came over and won the first race and beat Emma Snowsill. So we were like, oh, I guess Emma's not going to win the 5 from 5. And knowing that Vanessa was only going to do that race, she wasn't ever planning to do the 5 races. So Emma Snowsill, unfortunately, or Frodeno now, she couldn't win the 5. I then went to New York.
For those who don't know, Emma is Frodeno's wife.
Correct. So they're the real power couple. They both won the Olympic gold in 2008 and good friends of ours, just great people. But so, so that basically meant I was the only one that could possibly win the 5 from 5. And I'd won New York the previous year and actually knew New York was one of my favorite races. I did go on to win New York 4 times. It was just I loved everything about the race. It suited all of my strengths. And so I won New York. Now I was 2 from 2, and the media starts to get a bit excited. But I was, again, just approaching it 1 race at a time. I truly didn't think I'd win Chicago. There was an athlete by the name of Craig Walton. I don't know if you guys know Craig Walton, but I still to this day put him down probably as one of the greatest swim bikers our sport has ever seen. And he could run all right. I mean, he could still run a 32:30 10K. For a big boy, he could actually run, but he could swim and bike, just enormous power. But I figured potentially I could give him 2.5 minutes off the bike in Chicago. And that's what it was. It was 2.5 minutes. I sprinted, caught him by about 6K, ran a bit too hard. And then that was it. I won Chicago, backed it up, won at Los Angeles 2 weeks later. And then all the pressure was on winning Dallas in October. And I was actually dealing with an injury. I flew both, I had 2 chiropractors working on me from 2 a.m. in the morning at that final race. And that's another whole long story in itself. But yeah, in the end, won the 5th race. And yeah, it was a very special moment. I think not the money as much. The money is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that wasn't a part of it, but it's very rare in sport to have a goal, to have a plan of trying to make something great happen. And it actually does happen. 2007 was a year for both, like you mentioned at the top of the show. My wife, Laura Bennett, had an amazing year too. She won the high V race, which was a, massive payday on its own. And then she, won a car, and then she qualified for the Olympics. And so it was just it was a massive, massive year for both of us. So special memories for 2007.
That is such an awesome story. I love that.
Sorry, I rabbited on a little bit.
No, that's totally fine. You've had great success in Olympic races and non-draft races, and also on draft legal races, such as the ITU, right? Do you have do you prefer one or the other?
I definitely prefer non-drafting Olympic distance racing. For me is
non-drafting and Olympic distance.
Yeah, non-drafting. I don't like the drafting. I had to adapt when the ITU changed it to drafting in 1995. World Championships was the first time we did draft legal. Before that, the World Championships was non-drafting. For me, I always came down that my bike was my raw talent, my ability to have a very decent functional threshold power, or FTP. And for 40 kilometers, that was just the right amount. But my running was my passion. Bike was my talent and run was my passion. And then the swim, I just, turned up and did the best I could. But the draft legal, look, it became a game and I still enjoyed it. And I'm excited that the sport had it. I'm disappointed that the sport doesn't focus more on non-drafting Olympic distance racing because I just feel like that's the most pure form of triathlon out there. You can't have a weakness in the swim, the bike, or the run if you want to win Olympic distance non-drafting. Whereas if you go to Ironman, you can have a weakness in the swim and you can still be a very competitive Ironman athlete. And you can have a bit of a weakness in the bike in a draft legal Olympic distance. So it's kind of, for me, the non-drafting Olympic distance triathlon is still the most pure triathlon out there. And if you have to be a triathlete to be able to win those races. But that's just my opinion.
No, that makes sense. Is that why you decided not to go to long course races? I mean, you did some. You did some 70.3s, and I think you did Kona one year, didn't you?
Yeah. So, I was always a big believer at identifying what your strengths are and really just focusing on those. And all the testing that I did do showed that I had a reasonably big VO2 max and that I could sit at a pretty high percentage of that. And it was also my passion. I loved to run fast. I loved 5 and 10K races, where 10K running races and things were fun. I enjoyed that all-out sprinting 10K when you could get yourself so fit.
Like your heart in your mouth, almost that dying feeling.
And where everything matters, where you're winning races by 5 seconds. And you've got to have a finishing kick, and you got to the detail in that, and that just became. I became, I guess, a little bit comfortable in that area, but it also was an uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. It was uncomfortable to do it, but I became very honed in on that. There was also the fact that there was such a big series in the US, of non-drafting Olympic distance races. When I was, mid to late 30s, that's where all the big money racing was. And then, High V came along after the High V triathlon became non-drafting in 2011. Right as the Lifetime Fitness Series was kind of becoming less money, High V turned up and I was able to win that. And that again had, a 200 grand payday. And it was a very good sort of, again, the non-drafting bike for me for those next 3 to 4 years was the focus. At the end, I gave Kona a go. I did Melbourne Ironman, and then I went to Kona. I didn't do anything right. I actually thought that I could do quite well there. I was training with Craig Alexander and Timothy O'Donnell going into the 2012 Kona Ironman World Championships. And to be honest, we just all buried ourselves. I look at my training, what I did in that 2012 period. It's unbelievable what we were backing up.
Please.
It'll be something like, okay, on a Wednesday, I'd get up I do a 10K run, which I call best easy pace. So usually around that 35 to 38 minute 10K run, just out the door, go do a run. Then go do a 5 to 6 hour bike, anywhere from about 150 to 180K. Usually finish at the pool for a sort of an easy 1 or 2K swim. Next morning, get up and do a 100K time trial on the bike with a 10K warm up. Go straight to swim squad, swim 4 to 5K, have lunch with both Tim O'Donnell and Craig Alexander at Whole Foods. Then we grab our running gear, drive up to the Switzerland Trail. We'd run sort of 25 kilometers up at 9,000 feet, 2,500 meters. That's on that. This is all within 48 hours. I mean, and then Friday, get up, run another 10K in the morning, swim 5 to 6K. Usually do a double run on Friday. Just the work, it was just too much. I remember Dave Scott telling me, he's a good mate of mine, and Dave Scott, for those who don't know, he'd won Kona 6 times. He's like, you guys are overdoing it. Anyway, I got through Kona. It was one of those, it was an experience. I was poorly trained. Not only was I overtrained, my nutrition was just very poor. From what we know now and the science we know now about, ketosis and fat metabolizing, and I had a lot of sugary drinks, and, my whole race was up and down, and had just massive fluctuations. And I remember getting off the bike after I'd already had lots of fluctuations on the bike and just thinking, okay, let's just run. I can still run into a top 5. So I started running, went along a Leahy Drive, hit Palani Hill, which was 10 miles in or 16 kilometers in, just under the hour. So I was running pretty well. I was running sort of that 345K pace and really felt good. I didn't feel bad at all. Ran up Palani, headed onto the Queen K, and it was like...
And then it hit you.
Oh, it's amazing how... I don't know if have you guys done Hawaii? And it's amazing how that Palani Hill, it's not... If you ran it on its own, it's not a big deal.
Come on, it is steep.
It is steep, but I'm just saying in terms of if you just went out for a run and just... you did a couple of kilometer warm up and you just ran Palani and came back, you'd be like, okay, it was a hill.
Totally fine.
But when you do it at that point of an Ironman, which is generally that between that hour and 2 hours into your marathon, after a long day already on the swim bike, it's amazing how it just, boom. It just the amount of people, and it did me. And so after that, some walk running happened for the next sort of bit, and it wasn't that pretty. By the way, isn't it amazing how slow walking is compared to the slowest jogging? Like you think, I remember I've had times of myself walking and it's like 12-minute Ks or whatever. It's really, and that's good walking. Whereas if the slowest jogging you can do is like 9-minute K or 8-minute K pace, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I was walking wounded and I did come in. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I was just happy to be out there. Honestly, I've been watching the race since I was a teenage kid, and I just kept reminding myself, going, I'm on the Queen K. I'm here, don't take this for granted. You've got this special moment to be, and then coming down to Leahy, I just had to make sure I wasn't in the way of the women's finish. I paused at the end of a Leahy to let Carolyn Steffens is the Swiss girl. She just passed me and I didn't want to get in the way of her finishing. And I'd been running with Michael Raylert from Germany and one other guy. And they kept running with her. And I was like, no, I don't want to be in her moment. She's getting second at the World Championship. So I kind of stood to the side even for a little bit on her Leahy Drive until she finished. And then I ran in because I was so far back anyway. But it was fun.
And then you gave up on Ironman distance.
Well, it wasn't so much, had I been younger, I mean, I was 40 then. It was hard because like I said, there was still some decent big money races with the high V triathlon and things around in the shorter distance that I could still, even head-to-head races with Javier Gomez, we had a lot of great battles in those events. And so even at 40, I was able to take on Javier in that non-drafting Olympic distance and make a reasonable income. And as a professional, that was something I had to focus on. And I just didn't think I had the years to learn the new craft of Ironman racing. I think had I crossed over when when Craig Alexander did, kind of in his early 30s, I think that would have been, I would have pursued Ironman more. I have no regrets in not crossing over, though, to be honest. It was, I was happy with the way I got to have my career and watch my good mates, Chris McCormack, Craig Alexander, and all these guys have the big wins in Kona. And I was off in the US sort of winning my thing. So, I have no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, you knew your strengths and you knew your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to Beto. You have an interesting post on your blog about recognizing and developing strengths. How do you apply this to yourself, or how did you apply this to yourself as an athlete, and how do you do that with the athletes you coach now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a big advocate for everybody in the world. Firstly, identifying what your talents, what your strengths, what are you good at? And that's hard to do on your own. So I often say the best thing you can do is work with your spouse or your mum and dad or your kids, whatever it is. And just say, look, we're going to sit down and I want you to say what you think I'm good at. And then you do the same to them and practice it. My wife, Laura, and I, we do it to each other probably once a year. And we're all very good at pointing out our weaknesses. Erica, you're good. You could do this better. You could do this better. It's like, I don't think we're very good at recognition and recognizing each other in a positive light and saying, wow, you speak so well. You run a podcast incredibly well. This is it's a good thing to do and try and help people identify what they're good at. And I truly believe everybody on this planet has a gift and has a talent, has a strength. Some people are caregivers. Some people are great leaders. Some people are natural athletes or entertainers. And what we want to do is have everybody in the world pursue their strengths. Because if everybody can pursue their strengths, then I truly believe the world's going to be a better place. That doesn't mean we don't have a look at our weaknesses and where can we work a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But what I often do when I talk about my weaknesses or things that I want to work on, is that's where you outsource and you build your team. It's who can help me become better in this area of my life. Okay. So for me, one of my big weaknesses is listening. Just ask my wife. I could be a better listener, right? And I get it. I can rabbit on and talk, but I could be a better listener. And so that's an area that, when I'm hosting a podcast, I'll write down at the top of every single show notes, I write listen. And then I write next to it, don't interrupt. And these are things that I'm having to do often because they don't come to me naturally. But then things even like some of the technical things with podcasting, I outsource it. I outsource this to an audio engineer that has really great sound. They can hear things. Hearing is not a great quality of mine. As you can tell, I don't listen well, I don't hear well. My point is, I know what my weaknesses are, identify them, work on them a little bit, but don't put all your energy into those. Work on your strengths because that's where the magic truly happens, in my mind. The other one is the mental side and patience and maturity. I took a long time to mature and find patience. I was all in, run at a brick wall type personality, loved the hard training, loved it. I wasn't the one that wanted to sit down and really figure things out. An Ironman and longer require more data. They require you to sit down and be patient and listen to your body. And they weren't naturally coming to me. They weren't areas of my life that were easy. So, I played to my strengths and that was the short course racing, whether that was ITU or non-drafting Olympic. And then I think I did about 15 70.3s and even doing those 15, I think I won 8 of them. But every time I won, I didn't have that feeling, that winning feeling. It often felt like box ticked. Good, I made a bit of prize money and some sponsorship bonuses, so that's nice. But I never got that raw adrenaline, that special feeling you got from winning the shorter races. Not to take anything away from people that do get more out of those, but I knew that the longer distance wasn't for me because I wasn't getting the kind of feeling that I got from the shorter racing. So yes, when I wrote those blogs about sort of identifying your strengths and working towards them, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think it's important that we all spend a little bit more time encouraging each other, recognizing strengths. I think it's good for all of us.
I thought Beto wanted to say something.
So when you're racing, what's your favorite workout? And I remember, I believe when you were talking to Ryan Bolton in your Hunter camper, I can remember, you said that you prefer to go a 1 hour all out in a running or 2 hour all out riding a bike than a 5 hour long ride, steady run, or a 2 hour steady run. So what's your favorite workout when you were...
Yeah, that was actually, yes, the episode with Ryan Bolton, where we were saying, identifying what athletes are probably naturally suited to what distances they should be doing. And you can quite often tell what athlete's suited to what by just asking them what they want to do on a certain day. So if Vito, I said, what do you want to, you can do anything you want today. I want you to train, but tell me what do you want to do? And you say, I want to do a 5 hour bike ride. You start to identify the type of probably natural physiology that you have. Whereas if you say, Greg, what do you want to do today? I would say something like, my favorite workout would be a fartlek workout, so playing with speed, 20 minutes, 20 by 1 minute, so 1 minute as fast as I can go with 1 minute recovery, running. And I would want to do that on a somewhat undulating trail, maybe some forest. And before I'd go in, I'd plant my visualizing. I'd have Javier Gomez, Alistair Brownlee. They're all in my head playing, and it's a race. And I've got the commentator and the helicopters above me. Like for me, it's playing with speed. It's the energy of the crowd, that whole thing. And that kind of a workout, that 1 minute all out, and then the 1 minute recovery is not easy. You're still moving, and then just seeing how far I can go in that kind of a 40-minute workout. So I like the idea of seeing how far I can travel. But that's definitely a kind of workout I like. And I like the recovery part because also allows me to keep going back to my visualizing. I really enjoy being in my own head. And so I can, keep coming back, and there's a little commentator going in my head, Greg Bennett's got to
savor your wins, because you said you're speaking with Jan Frodeno in your last episode, and you said you beat him 1,000 times in this podcast.
Yeah, I know, that's funny now.
Recovering just to savor the victory.
Exactly. Well, it's more to
get ready for the next one.
I have these little minutes recoveries and things, so I can reestablish the next part of the race, and yes, and I did talk about that with Jan, that even now, and I'm not training. I do 45 minutes of training a day right now, just while the kids are young, and I don't have any major goals until the world opens up. So for me, it's 45 minutes a day of training, but that quite often is a 35-minute bike, just some big gear work in the garage, and just I like to sort of do, I do 4 3-minuters as hard as I can, big gear in the dark garage. I don't have Zwift or anything, but I enjoy that, and then jump off and I run, just 2 kilometers as hard as I can. And in my head, I've always got a 30-second lead on Jan Frodeno, Javier Gomez, and Alistair Brownlee, and they're trying to chase me down. And it's amazing how well I can run when I'm being chased. So yeah, that was funny with Jan. I do still do that a lot. I enjoy that. It really helps me just get more out of myself, honestly.
I mean, Visualization, I think it's called visualization, isn't it? Like this technique
Correct.
To get yourself into that mental state of racing.
Yeah. It's just, for me, it's just a bit of play, honestly. I mean, it did help when I was an athlete. I did a lot. I would actually, in warm-up, I'd be like, right, who are the players? Who are the guys? And I'd pick 5 or 6. And what kind of a bike have we just had? What kind of a bike have we've all just in, and I create the scenario. Am I chasing or am I being chased? And I'd go out onto the trail, and just, that's what I would focus on, when I was absolutely burying myself as hard as I could running. And then in the recovery, I'd go, okay, Greg, you had a 26-second lead. Now it's down to 21 seconds. What are you going to do? And I'd create this anxiety and this fear, and I'd get better and better at handling that. So by the time I got to races, and it actually did happen that I had a 30-second lead, I was used to that feeling of anxiety and self-doubt and fear that comes whenever you're winning a race. It can be very, very scary. And so I
don't know. I've never won a race.
Well, leading a race, or being chased by anybody. Have you played catch with your kids or whatever? That feeling of somebody chasing you is always a bit scary. And so I used to practice that, and then practice also the chasing side. But yeah, for me, it was always a game and always a lot of fun. And I've said in my show a lot, I always visualized that I still won. Even if I was having a bad day, I just made it sure that everybody in my head was having a bad day as well, but I still got to win. I always finished on a positive. So yeah, it's just a fun way for me to get through training most of the time.
Talking about the Brazilians, Greg, do you remember having raced with any Brazilian during your career? I believe you've mentioned Alexandre Manzan.
Yes, Manzan.
Is that right? How was it?
Well, those guys were the reason why guys like Chris McCormack and myself started developing so much bike power because we could run okay, but these guys were rocket ships, and they changed the running. They were sub 30-minute 10K runners. And when the sport became draft legal, it really meant, and they could swim. So they were going to be there in the bike. So you had to try and figure out how you could soften up their legs to have a chance. Because they were so fast. And so fast on the run that guys like Chris McCormack and I, we could both run. We were, by the end of my running career, I was probably a low 29-minute 10K runner. But they were the guys that during that 90s period were the runners. You had Simon Lessing, who was out front. He was gone. He was the guy that could swim, bike, and run. He was the Alistair Brownlee of the late 90s. Simon Lessing was just phenomenal. But the Brazilians always in my mind were the guys that you had to get rid of them. You don't want a head-to-head race with them. And like I said, the closest, battles I had was probably Cleveland World Championships way back in 96. I was 24 and, that was definitely, I mean, there's been more Brazilians since then, but I think those two definitely stood out for me during that period of my career.
No, definitely. They were like major marks, and we call them our triathlon idols.
They are the greatest of our time, of all time here in Brazil. Like,
are they still involved in the sport down there? Do you guys are they coaching, or what are they doing?
They're coaching.
Yeah? Oh, very good.
They're both coaching. Leandro has a coaching in Brasilia, is the capital of Brazil, and Manzan is in, I believe I know it's in Minas Gerais. That's another state, but I don't know exactly the city. We talked with him. We posted about him in our podcast. We have like a session that we call the Triathlon Idols, and he was our, I don't know the exact word to say this, but we outspoke him to show him what we did and to remember, and to the new generation, the triathletes that comes in Brazil that didn't know about Manzan and Macedo and some other guys like come before us. And that was something that we are trying to do here.
No, that's
with
awesome.
From the past.
It's so important that we as the older triathletes have been around a while to try and build some of the legacies up for the younger ones, and I think it's now we're sort of 50 years into the sport, or 45 years into the sport. We're starting to see these real generational changes where, you got 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds now that they would have been 2 or 3 years old when these guys were racing. And I'm just hoping that our sport can do a good job, whether it's Ironman or ITU, or maybe it's up to all of us, to keep retelling the stories and create that sort of, that history that we have an amazing history. It's such a global history. It's been such a global sport. Yeah. That's one of the things that our sport, we have great equality. I think that's what we're between men and women. I just think it's something I'm really proud of as a guy. I think, there's so many sports out there that are rubbish, but I think our sport's done well with that. But the other side of it is, I think we're a very global sport. I think that's also really impressive.
It grows very fast in the last 10 years. Like we used to say here, Fagner and Serginho are always bullying me about this because I am the oldest guy here. Not the oldest.
He's our dinosaur, Greg.
Yes. I've been doing triathlon since 97 and I love the sport so much. And I've been following everything that happens in the sport in these last 24 years. And the new guys, like they are coming right now. The triathlon is growing so fast that they don't know the past. They don't know about the past. And with some friend that I talked to, we have the opportunity to talk to Greg Bennett. I said, who? Greg Bennett.
and that's
Greg Bennett.
Unbelievable.
I said to him, you know tennis. Do you like tennis? Yeah. Do you like tennis and talk and you have the opportunity to speak with Andre Agassi? It's the same thing that speaking with Greg Bennett.
But I think that's part of our role now. That's part of our role as podcasters. We are storytellers, and we are sharing history. It's part of the reason I've had Mark Allen and Dave Scott on my show, and I'll have Paula Newby-Fraser and Erin Baker and Karen Smyers and McGilly Jones, and there's so many great, the women that forged the way for the new generation of women are just absolute legends. The Godfather, Dave Scott, then you have Scott Tinley, these guys that what they did for the sport, there was no sport without them. And I've talked about it where I kind of rank the greatest 50, triathletes of all time, and I have a whole spreadsheet how I do it, and I take Dave Scott out of that greatest 50 of all time because I just call him the Godfather. That he doesn't
have to be on the list.
He doesn't have to be on the list because he's beyond the list. Without someone like Dave and even potentially Mark Allen, they're just such. There's such, and you throw in Erin Baker and Paula Newby-Fraser and their rivalry on the women's side, and what they did with their rivalries, they're the reason that the media followed the sport in the end of the day. And the media followed, so the sponsors came, so we got more races and blah, 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 blah. It was a real snowball effect from these guys. And they didn't make a lot of money. They did okay, but they actually they didn't do it for the money. I mean, Dave Scott, the 6 wins that he had at Kona, Ironman, I think he said he got paid on the last one, right? And otherwise, they did it because they wanted the challenge and the love of the sport. I mean, it's phenomenal.
They changed the sport.
They changed this. They didn't just change the sport. They changed science. And what I mean by that is nobody believed that a human being, science had proven that a human being couldn't go as fast as what Mark and Dave did at their 89 Ironman. That it wasn't metabolically possible for the human being to do the kind of splits, the times that they were doing, that it wasn't possible to go to fat for energy and go as fast as they did. Fat was meant for walking long distances, but the speed in which they went, the 8 hours and what was it for Mark that year anyway, I forget the exact, very low 8s. And the head-to-head racing battle that they had, not only in 89, but in 87, the other battle that they had, these put the sport on the map and changed science, which is fine, phenomenal.
To think that they did that when they did that, like in 87, 89, like we didn't have much information.
With the
Nobody knew
that it was back there.
Yeah. Can you see these magazines behind me here?
Yeah.
Here I've got, hang on. What do we got
Is
here?
that the Triathlete magazine?
This one, okay, here's 2 I'll pick up right now. So this is awesome. My father-in-law has been doing triathlon since the mid-80s as well. He's now 80. He's still doing them. It's just a phenomenal guy. This one, so he's got all the magazines from the early 80s.
So awesome.
So this one's December 1985 with Scott Tinley on the front, Scott Molina on the front cover. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Isn't that just so cool? And I love going through these and totally just sort of looking at the gear. I mean, look at these. Remember these sock racing shoes? Can you guys see those? Those Nike shoes, those sock racers. Basically, actually, they're not the sock racers. They're for when you should swim in them. But the gear in here is just hilarious. But what I love about it is that's where the sport started. The simplicity of using sailing wetsuits and cutting off the knee pads to swim in, which is when I kind of came into the sport, was all of this kind of, we needed to wear a wetsuit because it's cold. Well, there's no such thing as a swimming wetsuit. Nobody had those. You had sailing wetsuits or diving wetsuits, and you just, cut them how you want, and then you'd wear them. And that
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and then even the clipless pedals in here, in one of these, there's an advertising for the toe strap pedals. You guys wouldn't even been around. The toe strap pedals were everything. You used to reach down and you get to a set of traffic lights, you have to reach down, loosen them, and try and get your foot out, and then put your foot down when the set of lights are. And then these things came along, the clipless pedals. So what? They come from ski binders? It's like the future is here, you could clip in. And then the aero bars came along at that same time. And these magazines have the first advertising of the first ever kind of, Scott DH aero bars, or the profile aero bar design things. And the guys like Scott Tinley, Scott Molino, Dave Scott, these guys are the ones that embraced all of that. And triathlon, more than cycling, embraced all of these gimmicky new things and changed the face of cycling even. The cyclist Le Monde, when he won the Tour de France, it was after he'd seen the triathletes using the aero bars. The Oakley sunglasses. Yeah, the Oakley sunglasses. They start in triathlon. They don't start anywhere else. Triathlon was the beginning of Oakley. I mean,
triathletes love those gimmicky things.
Yeah, and that's why everybody loves to come to our sport and test their new products, and then they go on to see if it makes it in triathlon. Okay, we'll go and try, see how it goes elsewhere.
Bob Babbitt made a post about some weird gear that he found in his drawer, like the Oakley sunglasses that go around your hair. You remember it's like chew one and it goes like this. And there's a swimming cap that comes with the goggles and comes like this.
I remember that. I know.
Amazing.
But that was the thing. We all got excited about those things. Disc wheels, remember when the disc wheels came out? And it's been, look, there's still a lot of stuff coming out every year, and new technology, new nutrition these days is advanced beyond anything. I mean, look at the carbon shoes we're racing. They're running shoes now. Do you guys run in those new, bouncy shoes? Unbelievable how good they feel. Have you guys, anybody tried them?
I haven't.
I try, but I don't have the pace to see the difference. My pace is not allowed to feel the difference. I run like for 30, for 35. So for me, it's not so great.
The same pace every time.
I heard you and Craig Alexander talk about this in your podcast, and I said, well, of course, they are great runners. For them, each little difference could make.
I actually think you're wrong. I think actually the biggest difference will be in the slower runners are going to feel more, because I went and bought myself just a pair of the Nike Pegasus 37. So they don't have the carbon plate, but they got the same kind of foam material, cushioning. Okay. Oh my goodness. It's truly made running pleasurable again. You can run on the road without it being so impactful. It is actually, my point, I would never fork out $250 for a pair of, running shoes.
That's my
these
point
days.
too.
Yeah.
I am at the same page. We're on the same page.
Yeah, look, if you said, let's do a major race, and I might do something when I turn 50 next year, I might fork out, if I wanted to try, if it was performance-based, if my goal was performance-based, I might, talk to Laura and fork it out, for my birthday or something. But I have put them on, though. I have put those shoes on and had a little run around a car park, and just blew my mind how amazing those shoes are.
I have one Nike. I don't remember the name, but I have one with the carbon plate that I use for the races, and I feel that this one is really good.
Yeah,
it feels really good, and it's the same thing that you said, that it's not smashing your knees and your foot in the ground so hard. So that's the feeling.
And do you guys see
that in terms of high speed? No, it's not.
Look,
so,
I think
I don't have the pace to see if this can improve my pace this much, but the feeling is good.
It is feeling good. But did you see this recently? Beth Potter, the young triathlete from Britain, just ran a 5K.
Oh yeah, she ran
14:41.
The best 5K. Yeah,
unbelievable. Triathlete, unofficial world record for 5K. It's funny. I told my family-in-law and everybody over Easter weekend, and everybody said, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "No, you don't get it. You don't get it. This is a triathlete. Female triathlete just broke the world record for 5K running race. 10 seconds quicker than a Paula Radcliffe. I mean, a 14:41 5K. And she ran in the new ASICS, I think they're called Metaspeed or something. Not to say she's not a phenomenal runner anyway, but I was impressed with just this equipment that's coming out. Unbelievable.
Sooner or later, everybody will be racing in carbon shoes.
I think so. And it's not just the carbon. I think there's something to the foam as well. I don't know. But I haven't tried the carbon shoes properly to realize, if they injure you or not injure you. I've heard they can be a bit stressful on your calf and stuff. So
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your 50-year plan for next year. Are you doing a special race? Are you doing a triathlon and calling out everybody you know?
That could be fun. Honestly, I'm up for, I've had a lot of people write me since I've kind of mentioned it on my show. I had a woman by the name of Rebecca Rush on my show, and she's a phenomenal adventure racer and world champion 24-hour mountain biker, and she wants me to go do her event that she puts on. I had Joe DeSana, who's the owner and founder of Spartan Racing and, Tough Mudder and all that, and so he wants to do something. I don't know what we'll do. I want to do something that I can train for and enjoy, that scares me a little bit, but doesn't take away from my time with my family and my real priorities in life. I feel athletically I've kind of done everything I've needed to do in terms of finding high performance, but I think it's just something to put out there that if the world opens up, by 2022, and I can get out there and do a challenge, I would like to go do something. I don't know what that is yet, though. I'd actually like to do one of those long mountain bike stage races. You guys ever done mountain biking or a long stage race like that?
If I ever got on a mountain bike, I think I'd have to go to the hospital.
No. I did some mountain biking when I was
fall and break myself.
BMX racing when I was a kid, and then mountain bike when I was 15 or 16 years old in the countryside of my. And I still do. I have a gravel bike in my father's country house. So when I was there, I'll do some gravel rides. That's very nice.
Yeah, I'm not crazy on it. I don't want to break a bone. I'm not interested in that, but I do enjoy going to the downhill mountain bikes up in parks in Colorado, and I'll do the green and the blue and maybe a little bit of the black runs. It's like skiing. They kind of, but I do enjoy it, the downhilling especially, but again, I don't really want to crash and break bones, so I'm a little hesitant. But yeah, something like that could be fun. Anyway, yeah,
for sure. So, Greg, we have a special kind of feature in our podcast, which we call in Portuguese Roda Presa. I think in English it would be something like the bonking hour, something close to that, where we ask our guests to tell an embarrassing moment that he had during racing or training. I'll give you an example. In Challenge Miami, we had Ben Canute dropping his water bottle and almost falling on the transition, and Tim O'Donnell that he wanted to stop at the transition before he actually was done with the bike leg. So that's what we call an embarrassing moment. Would you like to tell us about that? Have you had one?
Yeah, I have one. It's not so embarrassing. It was just, I lost my mind for a moment. So it was in Geelong World Cup. Well, back then they were called World Cups, now World Series. And what I'd done is the hotel was only a couple 100 meters away from the transition area. But Laura and I had gone out and done our big warm-up together earlier that morning. And then I went and racked my bike and everything for the race. And but after the warm-up, I went back to the hotel and then just walked my bike over to the race. But it was a decent walk. I walked down and anyway, finished up my warm-up swim and everything else. And then they had us ranking up, ranked 1 to 75 guys in the world. The helicopters there, the crowd's all around, and they're like, okay guys, 3 minutes to start time, stand in line. Now it's really, the adrenaline's really kicking in. It's just this okay, I'm amped. And at the time I was ranked number 1 in the world, so I was the guy at the front. And then I had this thought, hang on, after my warm-up this morning, did I leave my bike shoes in the hotel room? And I was like, oh no. So I've had to sprint up the ramp past everybody, looked at my bike. There was no shoes clipped onto the bike. I said, oh crap. So I start sprinting to the hotel room. I'm going to miss the start for sure. 100% I'm going to miss it. They've already said 3 minutes. And everybody's looking at me. Everyone's, Greg, come back. I start running away. And then finally, I met my coach at the time, Lance Watson, came running after me down. He's like, Greg, where you go? Where you go? I was like, mate, I've got to get back to the hotel room to get I said, I'll just start the race late. They're like, no, you'll be disqualified. You can't start the race late. I figured could be a bit of a fun challenge to try and catch up. And anyway, he went back and got my bike shoes from the the hotel room. I missed my coming down the ramp first to pick your spot on the pontoon. So I had to go down last, because it was just such a mess up. And then, I think I had a terrible day as it was. But anyway, it wasn't so much embarrassing, more just stupid. And I remember just the real heightened anxiety of doing it. Because, I don't know, do you guys have those triathlon dreams, the night or two before a race? Where
I think everybody does.
Yeah. Well, I had it in real life. It was I had the same.
I said, I remember that once I was dreaming that I lost the start of the race and I trained so hard. So I think everybody try to get the alarm clock away from his bed.
Yeah.
So when it starts, you have to get up to just to turn it off. So
yeah.
I always dream that the alarm clock doesn't go off, and that's why I almost never sleep the night before, because I'm like, it's not gonna go off.
It's so true, isn't it? It's amazing how many times though in a dream I get out of the water, run to the transition area, my bike's not there. It's just where is it? That was my dream. And
You're alone on the transition.
This was about as close to a nightmare triathlon dream as I could have ever experienced, to not have my bike shoes actually on the bike. There was another one I remember before Montreal World Championships in 98, I think it was. And again, I think Chris McCormack and I were ranked number 1 and 2, and they had us all lined up. And it was in the rowing course regatta area in Montreal, which is inside the Formula One track in Montreal, and there's no trees or anything around. And both Chris and I said to each other, I need to use the bathroom. This is probably 5 minutes before the race start. And this was another experience where there was a big scoreboard, big up on the sideline. And so we both kind of looked at each other and we ran up behind this scoreboard, and there were just these 2 pillars holding up the scoreboard. And we both drop our ducks and have to do our business before. And that was another one. They were just screaming for us to get down to the start. So I've had some close calls, but never anything too bad. I think my wife Laura has a couple more. You have to have her on your show because she's got a really good one. I'll let her share it with you when she comes onto your show, because that's her time in France when she was doing the French Grand Prix. She did something kind of silly, which was kind of embarrassing for her.
I'm gonna let her tell us when she comes on.
Yes, do.
I'm sorry, our kid is screaming on the background.
You know what? I love that noise, guys. I got 2 of my own, and I totally get it. So feel free to go grab her or him. Is it a young boy? Him? How old is he?
5 months.
5 months. Oh, congratulations. Oh, that's wonderful. What's his name?
Noah.
No. Oh, I love that name. Very cute.
Thanks.
Oh, well done. Yeah, no, I don't mind any baby in the background.
My internet is unstable because of my kids. They are having the classroom right here in the other room.
You think they're in the classroom, but they're actually playing Minecraft or something.
Yeah. I have one, the one with 7 and another one with 10. The one with 7 is terrible. Every time you go there to see if he's doing his online class, he turned off the camera and he's laying down in his bed. Every time.
I know. You know what? This whole 2020, 2021. I really feel for the young kids, that are trying to do school, and in fairness, we're not seeing the numbers really affect them as much as the elderly, and I'm kind of like, the poor things, they're missing a whole year or 2 of learning. Anyway, and
socializing, right?
Yeah,
that's a huge one, huge for all of us. I'm a big advocate of. Once this COVID does leave us, I'm going to hug everybody a lot. Watch out, everybody. I'm going to be a hugger. I'm going to be one of those guys that hugs you and you're like, hang on, I hardly know you. It's like, okay, it's too bad. I'm making up for all my lost hugs in these couple of years.
Here in Brazil, we don't have all this trouble because we are natural huggers here in Brazil.
Oh, there's another reason for me to move to Brazil. Yeah,
we
I
miss
bet.
this a
Don't
lot.
move here. Don't move. Just come by,
move here.
visit us.
Yeah, just come by, take some vacations here, and then you go back to Florida or go back
Wherever I'm going to
to
be.
Australia or else.
Greg,
Yeah,
I know you said you have your list of triathletes, and we would like to know, what is your quote unquote triathlon idol? Tell us, is there someone who has been an inspiration to you, either an athlete or a coach, that has influenced your career, either as an athlete or as a coach?
I think there's a lot. I think because I've always been somebody that's been curious and loved to learn. And I would say in my early days, starting my career, Mark Allen was I wouldn't say he was my idol or whatever, but he was definitely someone I looked up to and could see was doing incredible things. And I thought maybe one day if I could be anything like him, that would be kind of awesome. I had so many wonderful coaches and consultants in my career. It's hard to just pick one, but Steve Buchberger, a triathlon coach, when I was just a youngster, just understood that I didn't love doing the long training, and just he kept it really fun, and that was really important in my early 20s. It was just really fun. But then I went to Brett Sutton, who was another major influence in my career, and Brett, as you guys would know, is probably one of the most successful coaches in triathlon history. And I learned to train really hard. I learned more about myself in those years, I guess, of what the body could take day in, day out. Not one specific workout so much as just the day in, day out workload that I could take. But at the same time, I did lose my passion for the sport a little bit with that much work. And so I moved to Canada, and that's where I started working more on a consulting sort of thing with Lance Watson. And Lance was coaching Simon Whitfield and a number of other young Canadians, and then started coaching myself and Laura. Whereas I was at that age where we were now becoming friends, but the joy came back. And I appreciate Lance and Canada and the squad for bringing that passion and joy back to the sport. But, other than that, there's just been so many other my peers, the guys that I've raced and trained with for 25, 30 years. It's such an unusual community where your competition also want the best for you. Everybody you competed in, you're all desperate to beat each other, but you're also really keen to help each other. It's a very unusual, you don't get that in most sports. I have
like that?
I couldn't tell you if it was still like that right now, but from the guys that I've interviewed on my show, whether it's Vincent Lewis, Mario Mola, that train under Joel Filiol and his squad, and they all work together as a team. Or if it's the Norwegians with Rud Svitsen as their head coach, and they have Gustav Eden and Christian Blumenfeld and Kasper Stornes, and they all want the best for each other. There is still these... So yeah, I guess I'm answering your question. I think it is still like that. I think there is this real camaraderie where this sport is hard. And if you come in with a big ego or no humility, this sport is going to knock you about. And you're going to learn humility pretty quick. And I think that's what unites us all, We all have good days and we all have bad days. But either way, we have a day of triathlon and a day of suffering together. And that's what makes it special. I really think it's the suffering that makes it special. I don't think the easy days are special at all. I think it's I don't know about you guys, but my favorite experience in the world is crossing the line, win, lose or draw, doesn't matter, and sitting around and having lunch or a beer with everybody and just talking about their experience in that day. And everybody's talking, everybody's going, even though we're all exhausted, everybody's sitting there with a burger in hand and a beer, and we're just sharing, what do you think about that first swim turnaround? Oh, it was brutal, wasn't it? Oh, what about, that corner or that hill? Oh, man, was that so hot on the run? Oh, man, I had to walk through the aid station. It gives me goosebumps. I love that stuff. That's what it's about. It's about getting beaten up and the suffering and the heat and I think that's where you make the strongest friendships. I've talked about what I want to do on my show. is go have a
all
day.
the excuses. All you have to race are excuses.
The excuses. Yes. Well, you do get those too. What I could have done better. But that's what keeps coming you back, right? Because you never have the perfect race.
What ifs?
What ifs? I know. But sometimes it's those bad races you remember far more than you do the wins or the good ones, Some of those bad ones are the great stories. Chris McCormack and I referred to them as remember wins. You're creating a remember when moment. And what we mean by that is 20 years down the track, we're going to say, remember when, I remember, which race was it? 2010 World Championships in Budapest is the grand final for the ITU World Series. And I have never seen rain like the rain we got on that World Championship day. And I remember saying to some of the younger athletes as we wheeled our bikes out, because by this stage I was 38. And I just said, guys, and you're coming from the hotel room where you're nice and dry, straight out into torrential rain, like never seen rain like it. And it's just like, guys, we're creating a remember when moment. It's a remember when moment we're creating. So let's just do it. Wheel your bike out and get drenched, and here we go. And you can change that mindset by these experiences. Rather than being poor, they're a special moment in time that you're going to remember for a long time.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
I think now we can call you a friend. And I'd like to thank you very much, my friend, for this interview, for this great moment that we have shared together. It was an honor for us. And thank you very much for sharing this time with us. It's a very emotional moment for me. I'm very happy for this. And thank you very much.
Beto, you've been it's been so wonderful to have your feedback and support over this last 6 months of my show. You've often written a nice note to me. And like I said earlier, when somebody recognizes that you're doing something really, well, it's often the fuel you need to keep going. And so I can't appreciate you more than what you've been. I do think we've all become good friends here. I can't wait to come down to Brazil and hang out with you all and do maybe a little bit of a workout together. I love what you're doing with the show. The sport's lucky to have all of you guys because you're all storytelling and I think that's, as storytellers, it's our job to kind of share just how wonderful this world of triathlon is and encourage more people to do it. So good on you guys for what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Where's Beto?
I think we lost Beto. His kids are gaming. His kids are gaming on the. It's like you said, Minecraft is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's brutal.
It's brutal.
so many computers turn on.
Guys, it's been a real privilege, guys. Thank you for listening to me rabbit on and share a few stories. I really enjoyed it, so thank you.
No, thank you, Greg. This has been awesome. So, guys who are listening, please send us your feedback. If you like this, we can have Greg again on our podcast sometime soon, and we'll bring his wife as well.
Yeah.
She's awesome. She'll make a great guest.
Yes, she doesn't rabbit on as much as I do. She has great stories, but she'll get more to the point.
So, and also don't forget to listen to Greg's podcast. So if you listen to our podcast and you love it, please listen to Greg's podcast as well and give him some love.
Thanks, Erica. Appreciate it. Yeah, the Greg Bennett Show. Got some interesting guests coming up these next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Are you guys enjoying it? You guys enjoying your show? I love it.
Yes, very much.
Good.
So I think that's it. Are we wrapping up? Okay, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bring Noah so he sees Greg Bennett for once in his life. Hold
Please. I'd love to see the little guy.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg, for all.
Thank you very much.
Of course, Sergio. Thanks, buddy. Thank you, Beto. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Café com Tri, a sua dose de triatlon.
Pega o seu café e vem com a gente.